2. Hey guys, it's Ted Bogert. Welcome back to the TED Show. This month is Black History Month, and we are celebrating it as we should by bringing on Black leaders, community leaders, servant leaders, entrepreneurs, CEOs, you name it. We want to show and give a real heart and a real face to it so that you all can understand a little bit more about why we celebrate Black History Month. And I'm honored and excited to have State Attorney Monique Worrell back on the show. She was on the show when she was running. She has not been back since she won. Congratulations. And she is an amazing leader, a community leader. She's got a heart for helping people and to correct and figure out how we can do better in our justice system. Welcome back, State Attorney.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be back.
I'm so excited you won. I love the platform. And we talked, we did several shows before the election, and I just was so impressed and just engaged by what your mission is and your passion for it. So I do want to talk about that. I do want to educate them again on what state attorney actually means. But before we do that, we love origin stories. So give them a little 411 on you.
Sure. So I was born in Brooklyn, raised in Queens. My family moved to Orlando in the 80s. My parents are immigrants. My mother was born in Costa Rica, my father in Jamaica, and they came here in the 60s and to New York, and then we moved here as a family in the 80s. I went to University of Florida College of Law.
Ooh, go Gators.
Yes, go Gators. You see my orange and blue here today.
Oh yeah, you're representing today.
I am. And after law school, I became a public defender, and it was actually the only job that I applied for. Growing up, I knew that that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to defend individuals in our criminal legal system because I have a brother who was in the United States Air Force and was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. He self-medicated, like many of our veterans do, with narcotics, and he became addicted and spent much of my childhood in and out of the criminal legal system. Because of that, I knew that our system was fundamentally flawed and that I needed to do something about it. So I became a defense attorney and spent most of my career, 17 years as a defense attorney, also as a law professor at University of Florida. And in 2017, I came to the state attorney's office to lead the wrongful conviction unit. And I then just became fascinated with how much I could do, how much more I could do on this side of the aisle than on that. And shortly after that, I ran for state attorney, and here I am.
And here you are. All right, let's talk about go back just a little bit. What did you think when you looked at the system and you knew it and you understand where the flaws were? It's one thing to have the dream or the desire to fix it or at least begin to address the issues and make it better. It's another thing to take that leap and to actually do it, because being a public defender is completely different than being a state attorney. So what were some of the things that you were running and talking about? I remember, but I want the audience to know some of the flaws maybe, or the things that you see that you could make an impact on in our system.
So the first one is treating children like children. Florida had one of the highest rates in the country of direct filing children. That means filing cases against children as though they were adults. And that really is a legal fiction, right? Because we say that our children can't drive until they're 16. They can't vote until they're 18. They can't drink alcohol until they're 21. But we were sending them to prison, and quite regularly. And someone out there right now might be thinking, well, if a child commits a murder, then what are we to do with them? The problem is we were sending them to prison for far less crimes than murder. If you go to my social media, you'll see we did a second chance story on a guy by the name of Marquise McKenzie, and he was convicted as a child at the age of 15. He became a convicted felon, and because of that, his educational opportunities were thwarted. His employment opportunities were thwarted. So we must ask ourselves as society the question, what then is he to do? Now that he's served his time and he's come home, how can he become a productive member of society? Well, luckily for him, he had a great entrepreneurial mind and spirit, and he created the Dirt Master, a cleaning company, and is now a very successful entrepreneur. And he hires individuals who are coming out of jail and prison to give them opportunities that he didn't have. But he is a very unique individual. He's a very unique story. So one of the things that I've done in my administration was purpose ourselves to ensure that we treat children like children, that the status of being a child is always going to be a mitigator, and we will only direct file children when it's absolutely necessary, and typically only when there's been a loss of life.
Have you gotten, I'm always curious, because to me that is the most logical thing, but obviously you've probably had a little pushback because of the way things were done before. So is the way to address that pushback to continue to educate, which you all do an amazing job of, as you're reaching out to the community? Is that what you're doing, trying to educate people, trying to make the change and get more people to buy into the fact that children don't need to be processed? You had a good word for it. What's your word?
Prosecuted. We're prosecuting children in the same way that we do adults, and it's a legal fiction because they're not.
That's it.
So yes, it's education. You know, we didn't get here overnight. So I was not naive enough when I embarked upon this journey to think that I was going to fix it overnight. Although some people 14 months in, because that's how long I've been here now.
Has it been that long?
It has been 14 months in.
Wow.
Some people are impatient with the results because they believed that I would be able to get here and change a system that is centuries entrenched in its operation within 14 months. And that's just not realistic. But one of the things that I've done in that regard is any child who's going to be direct filed under my administration has to come across my desk. So if there is an assistant state attorney who wants to direct file the child, they have to sit down and meet with me and explain why that child should be direct filed. And I am, happy to report that there have been very few children direct filed in the last 14 months.
I cannot wait to see the long-term impact of that and how amazing that's going to be in changing a life. I mean, children, to me, it's a no-brainer, but I understand people, there's either revenge, there's justice, there's all sorts of interesting things. Somebody has to pay for it. I watch way too many crime shows, as you know. So somebody's got to pay for it. Yeah. But I love the fact that there is a rehabilitation component to what you're doing and what your approach is. Because just throwing them in jail, you're just creating you're creating no path for them. There is no path when they get out, and it's very difficult to come out as a convicted felon. It is just, even though you've served your time. I'm preaching to the choir with you. Tell us about state attorney. We talked about this before we went live. But we also talked about it on the original shows. State attorney, I had no idea what a state attorney was because on the shows I watch, it's district attorney. And
right.
So will you give us a little rundown of what a state attorney is and what your role is? Because you're over 2 counties.
I am, yeah. So state attorney is what a district attorney is in many other regions. For instance, where I'm from in New York, we refer to the state attorney as the district attorney. That is the title for my position in other jurisdictions. In fact, most other jurisdictions, it's referred to as a state attorney. Here in the state of Florida, we have 20 judicial circuits. Some of those host multiple counties like ours. We here in Orange and Osceola counties are in the Ninth Judicial Circuit. So that is one judicial circuit. Each judicial circuit has an elected state attorney. They also have an elected public defender. And so that means there are 20 of each of them throughout the state of Florida. And the state attorney's job is to determine what cases should be prosecuted, what resolutions should be sought, how cases should be prosecuted, what alternatives to prosecution should be available within our community, and basically the processes involved in each of those determinations. So how something is done here may not be how it's done in the Fifth Circuit or how it's done in the 19th Circuit. It's really about the constituency in a particular area and what they want to see from their elected state attorney. Here in Orange and Osceola counties, our constituents overwhelmingly voted for someone who was going to come in and attempt to change our criminal legal system to make it more just and equitable for everyone. I think our circuit is more open to that than maybe some other places around the state. So I'm very thankful to live in a place where equity is a focus of the people who live here.
But needs to be, and I think we need to. That word equity is really, to me, really coming into its own. We were talking about diversity and inclusion for a long time, but leaving equity out of the conversation is just not good. That doesn't paint a clear picture. So we need DE&I, diversity, equity, and inclusion, for us to really make the progress and change things that we should. Talk about the state attorney you get in. I love to ask this question of any elected official. What was the biggest surprise? Obviously, you knew you weren't going to change things overnight, but when you become an elected official, it literally changes the next day. I mean, now you're in the public eye. Now you've been elected officially by the people. What was the biggest surprise for you?
Honestly, it was the media. It was the fact that the media often focuses more on the story than they do on the truth.
Yes.
I wasn't expecting that. I did not. I mean, I know that for 4 years we heard the term fake news used a lot, and it was something that kind of became a joke and people talk, but it really is a thing. The media is more focused on being first to report and less focused on the accuracy of what they're reporting. And that's detrimental to our community. The media has the power to stir feelings and emotions based on the spin that they put on a story. And the spin doesn't necessarily have to be based on fact. It just is often based on conjecture.
It's a sensationalized. One of the biggest challenges I think we as a country have is it is very hard to go somewhere and find just facts. And then you obviously most people will somehow gear toward their particular party affiliation or their particular belief system. But when it boils down to it, it is very difficult to maneuver through all of the minutia of whether it's true or isn't. And so many people now get their news on social media, which is fascinating to me, which is even worse, I think, sometimes than regular media, because you can paint any picture. Anybody can be an armchair journalist. And so, yeah, I would imagine that challenge. That's one of the reasons why on the show, I just don't like any negativity. And I just want to ask the questions and get the answer straight from, not that you're a horse, but the horse's mouth.
And that's the best way. I mean, I have really prided my administration on, we're just going to deliver the facts. We're not going to give a spin. We're just going to deliver the facts. And, we want the community to process those facts for themselves. Yes. And, while social media news can be dangerous for us, we use our social media platforms to deliver what the news won't. And that is the facts.
Love it. All right. So let's talk about Black History Month. Black History Month, the reason I wanted to do the show is I just feel like it's so important to continue to showcase not just the Black leaders, the people from history who we remember most, Martin Luther King Jr., for example, but to really focus on some of the trailblazers and the people who are trailblazing right now, like you. Question, do you celebrate Black History Month? And if you do, tell us how.
So I celebrate Black history all year long. I appreciate that there is a Black History Month, but really, I think Black History Month is for other people. I don't think it's really for Black people. I think it's a time for other people to celebrate the rich history of Black people. The things that I do, being the second African-American state attorney in the state of Florida, is a big deal, particularly in 2022, to say that our second state attorney, and I told you we have 20 judicial circuits, and we've been, doing this state attorney thing for decades. But the very first one being elected in 2016. So I am honored to be a part of history, but education is really what I spend this month doing, is educating people on the history of Black people. My son is in a preschool, and I asked the teacher, well, what are you guys doing for Black History Month? And she said, well, we're reading, some stories, and we're talking about, different Black figures. And I went and I purchased a Black heritage coloring book for the kids so that they could have something to take with them, to reflect on as they grow and they develop and they mature, because we have a very rich history. And I think it's often deleted, it's absent. And I think it's important that we don't ever lose, focus of that.
Well, and I think you have to have, and it's so weird to say this word, and if I'm wrong, I know you'll correct me. I feel like you have to, the old white guy that I am, you have to have allies. You have to have people who want to continue the message. Somebody asked me, why are you doing a Black History Month? I'm like, well, this is part of American history. It's all our history. But I feel like it is like you said, bring awareness, educate. This is a time to really be focused on that, even though all year long it should be, we should be doing that. But I think it's to bring awareness and make people see other heroes, other local leaders, other people making an impact. Michael Moore was on earlier. He's a local attorney here, and we were talking about it. I think there's a fear of asking questions. And so one of the things that I want to do with the show is bring on and humanize it, like with you, and talk about it so that people don't mind asking the questions, aren't fearful to ask, because that fear stops the dialogue from moving forward.
Absolutely. And that's what education is about. It's about asking questions and getting answers. So I think that what you're doing is great. I think it's wonderful. And I'm happy to be a part of it.
I'm so excited. All right. So last question. When I say the word hero, who's the first person that comes to mind?
Barack Obama.
Tell me why. I love it.
Because as the first African-American president in this country, he put so much at risk. I remember my mother saying that she was afraid to vote for him because she felt that he would be killed.
Oh, jeez.
And I can't imagine what it must have been like for him and his family throughout his tenure as president, constantly living in fear for his and their safety so that he could be the first.
Yes.
And the pressure on him to do everything perfect, to speak exactly right, to look exactly right, to have a family that was exactly right, because he was always in a place that was ripe for criticism. And as near perfect as he was, to receive the type of criticism that he did. And I can't even imagine on his scale, but just humbly comparing my role as a public servant to his, I can't even imagine what the pressure must have been like to have to live a perfect life every single day because he was Black. He could do things that no president before him, would have to have endured because he was Black. And I see him as a hero.
I love that. All right, State Attorney. What's the best way for them to reach out to you, find out more about what you do? There's so much that you do. Tell them how they can find you on social media or wherever. We have the website scrolling across the bottom. Where else?
Yes. So visit us on our website at sao9.net. You can also find us on social media at the Ninth Judicial Circuit State Attorney or Office of the State Attorney for the Ninth Judicial Circuit, as well as on LinkedIn and Instagram. So you can find direct links to all of our social media from our website, and stay engaged, follow what's going on and interact with us, because my desire to do the will of the people didn't end when I was elected. So please engage with us and let us know your thoughts. And thank you, Ted, for doing this and for having me back.
You're an inspiration to me and to a lot of people. We really appreciate all your work, all the amazing work you and your team are doing in our community. Thank you so much for being on. I'm so glad I got to run into the other day.
Yes.
We did walk a mile in her shoes for Harbor House, and it was just so great to see you. And thank you so much again from the heart for all that you do in our community. State Attorney Monique Worrell with us. We'll see you guys later. Thank you so much. Get involved and get engaged, guys.